Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. So, after the good old battle rating clarifications, there is now another battle rating clarification setup. This one is actually called the final separate battle ratings by game mode changes, and what we're planning for attack aircraft with all aspect missiles in air battles. So once again, feedback is obviously being considered. This was a post written by Stoner, and it is mainly talking about the A-10s, the Su-25s, and of course the A-6E trams. Mainly because of the fact that it's not very fun facing them in air battles. We talked about this issue previously and how this would kind of affect a lot of different stuff going forward and would make a lot of people uncomfortable, and that's exactly what happened. So Gaijin have responded to this. Basically, with the A-10s, the A-10A and also the A-10A late, they are going to put them up in air battles by one step. So the Su-25s and also the A-6E are all going up by a little bit. And the reason for this is because they face stuff without countermeasures at stuff like 9.3 and also 9.0, which isn't very fun, as many people will attest to, including myself. The other change they're also doing, though, is in tandem with this, the spawn points of these attackers will be moved closer to the main combat zone in air battles. This will help these aircraft carry out their primary ground attack role at a higher battle rating, giving them greater ability to perform despite coming up against stronger aircraft, potentially increasing or maintaining their current level of effectiveness. So basically they're going to spawn closer. Whether that's the closer airfield or whether that is an air spawn, we'll have to see what goes on. And this is something that isn't surprising at all. This is something that we've actually talked about in the past. When they decided to remove the air spawns from a lot of vehicles, tons of them got hammered, right, and lost their effectiveness completely. Not even these vehicles were the ones that got affected the most, because these still had the air-to-air missiles, which were all aspect. They could have a great time with it, right? Now, if you have a look at vehicles like the Vautour, if you have a look at vehicles like the A-7, for example, and even others, which are kind of these like strike aircraft hybrids, they don't do very well. The F-84F is a great example of this too, where all of them are grounded, apart from the American one, because of its rank. So yeah, it would be nice to see them actually do this change for a few of those other aircraft too, such as the Vautours, and also vehicles like the A-7, and definitely the A-7 actually, and also stuff such as the F-84Fs, which aren't the American one, because once again, the American one gets an air spawn, or you could just give them all an air spawn to make them all equal, if you wanted to. So yeah, this is their idea of fixing it. Let's be honest, I think it's a good way of doing it. I don't see really any issues with this. It's something we've talked about previously. What is really funny about this, though, is this, though. We understand the point that head-to-head, aircraft without countermeasures facing all aspect missiles from these attackers feels unfair. And while statistically, instances where aircraft without countermeasures meet these attackers are much less common, compared to what, may I just say, we can see the matchup can be frustrating, as there are no effective means of countering an all-aspect missile once entering the launch range without flares. Yeah, pretty much. And, you know, since they moved down a lot of 8.3s, that means that 9.397 comes a bit more alive, 10.3 becomes, you know, more alive, and that means there is a bunch of vehicles around those BRs that you'll face which don't have countermeasures, and that's exactly what happens. This has been the problem since day one with these vehicles, and as I said, the way to actually fix it is to remove the all-aspect missiles, but they won't do that, because then, you know, people who specifically buy the premiums won't have a click me bang bang button. When we played the Su-25 and the tech tree, I was able to do ridiculous things with it when it first came out. I bet you any money I could still do those ridiculous things with it today, ending with a insanely high KD, very high win rate, because of the missiles, but also the guns and the maneuverability, which is something that people just always forget. So yeah, the vehicle itself is very powerful, same with the A-10, and the A-6E is just ridiculous with 3 AIM-9Ls and then a gun plus countermeasures to be able to stop anything coming in. So they say, however, simply raising the BR would be in turn unfair to the attack aircraft, which already have below average efficiency and would in turn earn even less. That is because one of the ways that you see efficiency is scoring the game, not the way that they're actually played. A lot of these vehicles do get gibbed before they get to the battlefield in air. That is very true. That's mainly because people don't pay attention, or it's mainly because of the fact that they set up on bombing runs which are so obvious that people can capitalize on this. This is actually a player issue and not exactly a plane issue, and that has been the problem since day one with these things. They have the ability to be very powerful, and they have the ability to be completely useless, and it is all based around how they actually play it, and that is the problem. That's why in a lot of situations when people play against these things, they feel hard done by, because if you run into somebody who knows what they're doing, and also if you're playing specific aircraft, it feels awful, and you remember the negatives way more than you remember the positives, because the negatives against vehicles like this are so negative, it is just not fun at all. That's why. And yes, this is a better solution compared to what they had before. It would be nice if they expanded it to other vehicles as well, the ones that I mentioned previously, such as the Vautour bombers, you know, stuff like the A-7s, and also stuff like the F-84Fs, but we'll see what they decide to do. I think this is a good middle ground. Hopefully all sides are happy, and it's something we've talked about previously that they should have done a long time ago, especially with these things. What I would have done is been a bit more vicious a few years ago and removed the all-aspect missiles. Then these vehicles can be very much balanced very quickly in the game. Especially now with the separation of battle ratings, it would be super easy to balance them. But for some reason, they want to just keep on with these all-aspects. Probably because the idea of removing them would be, well, it would get a lot of people annoyed who especially have bought a lot of these vehicles. Isn't it crazy how the vast majority of these vehicles causing issues are premiums as well? Yeah, funny, right? So, let's look at the BR changes that they've done. So the J11 is going down to 12.3, which is quite cool. The interesting thing I thought about the other day when I was looking at what they were doing with the BRs was maybe they're going to create a setup where they're going to move down so many air superiority fighters. That is going to be a way of dealing with CAS aircraft. So instead of you getting inside of an AA, you actually go into an air superiority fighter to try and counter stuff. I think honestly that's the world that we go to when it comes to these separate BR stuff now. Because if you don't go to that world, then there's going to be a lot of nations which just do not have competent AAs. We already have that, so you know it's just going to get worse as we go forward. Then the good old where is it? The Super-Étendard. You can see here they're actually, instead of moving it to 10.7, moving it to 10.3. So they're following what they're doing with the AMX. Basically following feedback instead of putting it up as much as they wanted to based on its statistics. Instead, it's going to only go up by one BR bracket, and then they're going to put it up again because it's going to be too powerful. So that's basically what's happening with that one. So yeah, those are the changes. I think overall they're very positive. It's nice to see them responding to stuff like this, and I understand they don't want to do the full solution because it would make people very angry, but at least this is a pretty decent half measure compared to what we've seen before. Hopefully, this gets expanded to other vehicles as well. So on top of that new information about the BR changes, we also had a changelog which confirms that the battle rating changes have been implemented. This was update 2.35.1.107, and yeah, basically they've added in the separation of battle ratings by game modes. This was actually in the data mine the other day, along with the SAV stuff, and also some red top missiles, which we'll get into as well.
But basically, they've added it in for high-tier aircraft, and something that I've seen quite a lot, actually been asked, is the fact, why aren't they doing it for lower tiers? And it's like, well, they're just not doing it right now. So once again, it's unfortunately a patience thing. So if you're looking at the low tiers and looking for a bit more balance there, it will come eventually. But at the moment, they've obviously focused on high tiers. So yeah, all of the battle rating changes that we've talked about over the last week or so have been implemented, which is pretty good. Then we have a bunch of changes to the red top air-to-air missile, which will be interesting to see. The red top is used by the Lightning, and I don't know if it's used by anything else. The Sea Vixen as well, so quite a prominent premium at 8.7. But the first change they made was the missile guidance time has been reduced from 40 to 30, so a nerf. Then the missile guidance delay has been reduced from 0.6 to 0.3, so basically the missile will track quicker from launch, which is quite nice. The lateral acceleration has been reduced from 16 to 12 Gs, and also the missile dynamics have been reconfigured. The effective launch range at low altitude has been increased. So basically, the guidance time has gone down, which is a nerf. The guidance delay has gone down, which is a buff, but not a huge one, especially with the way that you use these missiles. The lateral acceleration has been reduced by a quarter, which is a big nerf. And then also, the missile dynamics have been reconfigured, so we'll have to see what that does. But overall, it looks like a nerf to the red top, which sucks, because the missile was pretty fun to use, at least with the Sea Vixen, and then with the Lightning, you basically use it to go after targets who are trying to get away from you. The Lightning actually is pretty fun. I enjoy it quite a lot. I understand it is a playstyle thing, but for me, I've always enjoyed it. Then we have a bug that caused engine sounds to play incorrectly when looking down the scope. That's been fixed, which seems a little bit odd. We were actually watching a replay yesterday, and one of the things I realized is it doesn't kind of give you engine sounds of anybody else. So if you pick a person who is way away from the player that you're actually following, you can't hear any engines, and that kind of sucks. There was also a bug that caused the thermals on scout UAVs of rank 7 and 8 light tanks to be missing. That's been fixed too, so basically once again making sure that scout UAVs are pretty powerful, and they are crazy powerful. I've been using the TAM-2C more recently, just having a bit of fun with it, and yeah, it's a crazy good mechanic, especially if you're in a squad. You can just point people out all over the place. Also, funnily, the spawn point cost of respawning with air-to-air missiles with SACLOS guidance on helicopters has been added to ground realistic battles. The cost of 68%. The cost is 68% of the base carrying helicopter cost in spawn points. Currently, the only helicopter in the game with such missiles is the AH Mark 1 Apache with Starstreak AAMs. So, some of you old boys, well, maybe not that old, but at least a few years ago, may remember that when they were talking about helicopters and how there was a lot of issues with their kind of balance, one of the vehicles that they talked about which had the highest efficiency was the AH Mark 1 Apache. And everybody turned around and went, what? What do you mean? And because the Ka-50 was around, the Ka-52 was around, I think the Mi-28NM was around, obviously you have a lot of the other Apaches, and also the UHT, the German Fire and Forget Pars launcher was around too. And everyone just went, what? Like, how is that? And the reason is because you can first spawn it in ground realistic with the Starstreak anti-air missiles. Now, you don't have to use these missiles for doing anti-air. You can spawn them at the start and you can target light tanks because they have enough penetration. So what people were doing is they were spawning at the start of a battle, shooting up a bunch of light tanks, destroying them because you can't counter it, going down, to the base again, trying to do the same thing again, and then just do that over and over again. And there was no way of countering it because they had the range advantage. Nobody obviously spawned AA at the start, but even if they did, you could just stay near the ground and, nobody would see you. And also, at the same time, there was always targets to hit, especially nowadays with the way that the targeters work for helicopters.
and also the fact that there's a lot of lighter vehicles at the highest echelon of the game in form of light tanks. So yeah, they have finally, after many years, nerfed it so you can't first spawn that vehicle. I actually saw it a few times more recently when playing some high-tier stuff, specifically the HSTVL and also one of the Leopards. And yeah, it was still very powerful, it was still really good, and on certain maps where they're very flat and also helicopters spawn in specific places, there's absolutely no way of countering it unless you know it's coming, and guess what? You'll never know it's coming, so you just get blasted. So that change, not surprising, kind of surprised they didn't make that earlier, but yeah, quite a funny one at the end of the day. So 2 nerfs to the British, but we did get the Centurion today, so that's pretty cool. Not Centurion, sorry, the Churchill. For some reason in my head, I keep getting them mixed up, and I massively apologize if I ever misspeak. For some reason, I keep calling the Churchill Avery a Centurion. I just have a brain bleed when it comes to that, so I apologize. Anyway, hopefully you have a wonderful day. Let's see if we get the teaser today. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.